looks like we're live indeed. Hello, good evening and welcome to another NRAS live broadcast. I'm delighted this evening to be joined by Dr Lindsey Cherry from Southampton. Welcome. And we thought we'd do something slightly different this evening. We're actually going to be talking about looking after your feet during COVID, and as well as other foot related topics. So thank you so much for agreeing to join us on this. I hope everybody can hear me and see okay. I've got another laptop here to one side, so I'm just going to check that everybody's receiving us okay. It doesn't seem no, not at maybe if my colleague Shivam could just give me a little nod into the chat on Zoom that everybody can hear me, if they're saying they can hear me okay. Yes, excellent. So we are live, up and running. Thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you for the many of you who have already submitted some fantastic questions. So because we've got so many to get through, Lindsey, I'm just going to crack on, if that's okay with you.
Go for it.
Okay, so first one off out of the gate, so to speak, is uncontrolled huge verrucas caused by RA and medication. Passed from one doctor to another, you know, but all the time, but can't be part of the rheumatology care. Why is podiatry and looking after foot care not more embedded into rheumatology care?
Oh gosh, that's a huge question. Let's go back to the verrucas. No. So why is podiatry not part of rheumatology? I don't know. I'm a podiatrist, I'm biased. I obviously feel it should be. What we know from our previous work and the work of a number of researchers actually over the past 10 years, there's massive variation in access to podiatry services, especially rheumatology specific podiatry services. It's something that we're continuing to try and improve. We're certainly seeing an improvement, but that doesn't mean we're anywhere close to being there.
Right.
Keep going, keep up the voice. We'll continue to keep working on it. There are community podiatry services. They're not necessarily always linked to rheumatology teams, and sometimes it's a case of going through your GP to access those community services. And if you're really stuck, the College of Podiatry, if you go to their website, just Google College of Podiatry, it'll take you to the homepage. And you'll see a tab on there that says find a podiatrist, and you can click on there, put in your postcode, and it will tell you all of the podiatrists who are registered with them. So to be registered with them, you have to be a member of the health and care professions.
Oh, we seem to have lost you a little bit there, Lindsey. You've frozen. Hopefully you'll come back to me in a moment.
Council,
you've come back. We lost you for a moment there. You went and so could you just repeat that last sentence, because it just it might be internet connection, etc.
Oh yeah, sorry. So just to say that use the College of Podiatry resource if you're really struggling to access NHS podiatrists. It's not ideal, obviously, but it is a good signposting to people who are then practicing in your area that you can contact. Great.
And actually that was a question that came a little later, was about, you know, if there isn't specialist rheumatology care, you know, using local community chiropodist podiatrists, you know, so I think that really answered that. But there was just to link in with that question is, you know, can community podiatry care can you be referred to through your rheumatologist, so you know it's part of the NHS, so you won't need to pay? Or
again, regional variation, so it's not a straightforward yes or no. For most regions, if you've got rheumatoid arthritis and you're on a number of medications, that makes you eligible, but it's not 100% the case everywhere.
Yeah.
Again, you could go through your GP, and actually a number of podiatry services have got websites with direct contact telephone numbers. So again, you could always try and contact your local podiatry service directly. Unfortunately, there is that regional variation. But what I would say is, community podiatrists are more than able to help provide support and signposting, and equally podiatrists in private practice.
Great.
So there is support out there, it's just hard to get to sometimes.
Yes, it is indeed. So what tips would you have for very swollen and stiff MTP joints, which are really making it very painful for somebody to walk? Any tips on that?
Oh, good. Really good question. So when we talk about the MTPJs or MTP joints, imagine this is my foot, and these are my toes. It's these bits here, so just across the front part of our foot here. And that's a really common site for tenderness in the foot when you've got rheumatoid arthritis. There are a number of different reasons for those joints becoming painful and swollen.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of want to work out whether you've got a lot of active inflammation. So if they're very red, hot, swollen, then that tends to be there's active inflammation. So anything that's cooling is going to help. So this might be as simple as a bag of frozen peas wrapped in a tea towel.
Mm-hmm.
Rest your feet on it. Cold sprays work quite well. You can buy them over the counter from most pharmacies within supermarkets, things like that. They're quite handy because you haven't got to try and reach down to your foot. You can just spray from a distance, and it's about cooling the feet. That tends to give a lot of improvement. One of the other things though is that the feet stiffen up, and that means when you're walking we put a lot of pressure under that front part of the foot. So one of the things that we recommend is called cold can rolling. And this is when people tend to think that I've lost the plot and gone a bit bonkers. I promise I haven't. If you get something like a cold can of Coke, something like that, drop it on the floor. So sit down to do this exercise, put the can on the floor and gently roll your foot over it. And it helps to stretch out underneath that arch of your foot.
Oh.
And coldness is quite soothing as well. So that seems to really help.
That's a great tip.
Big difference.
Probably the next tip would be don't open the can of Coke after you've done that. It could be quite messy. Somebody here has, somebody with multiple issues because of their RA and some osteo. But how can I access holistic approach to looking after their feet? Saying that their rheumatologist isn't that interested in their feet, but and the GP only wants to look at one thing at a time. And again, it's maybe making better use of that community podiatry care if you can, or ask for a referral.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we tend to, I suppose as podiatrists, kind of break it down into component parts. So think about your skin health, think about your nail health, and I think we can touch on those a little bit in a while. Then think about just keeping the feet really supple. So anything, and you'll probably find you're naturally doing this yourself at home. So when you're sitting and resting, we just fidget. But keeping that movement, the elasticity in your feet, really, really useful. Pacing makes a really big difference. So especially with rheumatoid arthritis, I know folks sometimes tell me, well, I've got a window in the day where I'm feeling really good. So I'm going to get as much as I can done in that window, and then I'm going to collapse afterwards.
Yeah.
Totally get that, but not great for our feet sometimes, because the structures of the feet, they're not used to that level of intensity. So actually pacing yourself throughout the day really helps prevent the build-up of aching joints and then stiffness towards the end of the day. It makes a really big difference. Footwear makes a really big difference.
Yes, I was just about to come on to that about footwear. It's a regular question that we get on the NRAS helpline about, trying to get nice footwear, especially if you're going to a special occasion, and you've got a really nice outfit on, be it a really nice suit if you're a gentleman, or a nice dress or a skirt, and then is there anywhere that you'd recommend going or looking for?
It's really tricky, isn't it? So I guess what we talk about with folks sometimes is you've got your everyday wear, you've got your flare pair, and they might be slightly different. And then your special occasion wear, and we call them our sitting pretty shoes. So, if you're going out to a party, to a function, and you're largely sitting, really, that's okay. One day, a couple of hours, it's not going to make a huge difference to the long-term health of your feet, but it's going to make a huge difference to you on that day. Does it mean that you can use those shoes all day, every day? No. If you are going to go for something that is more like a fashion shoe, a low heel is always going to be better than a really high heel. And anything that's fastening is going to be better than anything that's slip-on. So slip-on shoes, imagine this is my foot again, tend to come around the front of the foot here, and they grip right across where you have those joints that we talked about before that are really painful. Whereas a shoe that fastens tends to be slightly wider around the front, and it holds onto your foot back here. So it gives you a lot more freedom, and they'll be a lot more comfortable than anything that is slip-on, even if it's just an ankle strap. I think anecdotally, and there's very little evidence for this, we find that if you're going to go for something that looks like a heel, go for a wedge style shoe. Because it gives the illusion of a heel, but actually if you look at the profile of the foot, it's not lifting your heel up quite so much, so you're standing a little bit flatter, but it still feels and appeals like it's a nice occasion shoe.
And we're not talking 1970s platforms here, we are talking small wedges.
Small wedges, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So I'm afraid those
really important.
So anybody listening that's got those 1970s platforms tucked away in the back of the wardrobe, I think you better leave them there, actually. Even if they do come back into fashion. Question here about after surgery for FDL, spring ligament and calcaneus. Am I saying that right? I have inserts and recommended to wear laced shoes above ankle boots. But, again, it's like what brands to be recommended. And I suppose it's more difficult after surgery. One, you have to get home from the surgery and just looking after your feet and caring for them and being worried about undoing the good work that the surgery's done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, that in that description, that's a lovely example of a range of different types of surgery. So what they're referring to is some soft tissue surgery and then bony surgery. And the different surgeries will have different recovery and different rehabilitation. And I think one of the biggest challenges we find after surgery is not necessarily in the immediate stages after surgery, but perhaps a little bit further down the line. And then it's about generally giving the foot and the structures of the foot as much support as possible. But one of the challenges with that, so a walking style boot, for example, brilliant because it's nice and wide in the toe box, it's nice and fastening, it comes right up around the ankle. So in theory, that's brilliant, but they can often feel heavy.
Yes, and somebody's actually remarked on boots being a bit too heavy to wear.
Yeah, so it's really hard. It's about finding the balance between something that is giving you a structured shoe as much as possible, but that you can tolerate, because if it's feeling heavy and then people are having to kind of lift the foot in an unusual way, that can cause some problems in the tendons on the front of the foot. So it really is quite individual. In terms of brands, it's really difficult, I would say, and we rarely now recommend a particular brand. I think years ago there were brands that we were far more familiar with, and we felt we could comfortably say, look, go there because you know it's going to be a good shoe, as it were. Now it's much more about the style of the shoe and making sure that the style fits your foot.
Yes.
Needs.
And as you said, maybe having different types of shoes for different times. So what you called your flare shoes for when your feet are swelling, but then your normal everyday shoes as well. And just getting away from footwear to an extent, but lots of people saying that they've got real ankle issues. Are there strengthening exercises or tips to be able to protect the ankle? Are there, should you be strapping it up if it's painful? Is that the wrong thing to do that? So let's focus on the ankles for a little bit.
Yeah, so ankles are really difficult because depending on the injury, sometimes you're advised to rest, aren't you? And you think, okay, if it's, in flare, red hot, swollen, feeling very unstable, then you probably don't want to be going out and doing loads of activity. But equally, if it's not red hot, swollen, but is more that aching, gnawing stiffness, then actually the more you can use it, the better. So it's trying to work out where do you sit and what's the reason for some of that, the ankle problem that you're finding. As a general rule of thumb, footwear makes a big difference to ankles. So use a shoe that is structured and supported and fastening. That makes a big difference. I think in terms of strapping and again, use of elasticated supports, those kind of things, it's really difficult. One of the danger zones, if you like, is using an elasticated support that's too tight, and it can start to act a bit like a tourniquet. And that can be problematic. So it's always best to get advice from somebody before using an elasticated support, especially if you've got a lot of swelling.
Yeah.
In terms of stretching, it's hard to show you over the internet.
But just on that, we do have, we're talking about exercise. There is some work that we did with some podiatrists some time ago now, some videos that we did with exercises as well. So do have a look on our foot health section on the website, and that there are some tips there about foot exercises in particular. Sorry, carry on, Lindsay.
No, absolutely, perfect. And I would say with stretching, what we do know is if you think of it as homework, and and we see people in clinic and we prescribe, do these stretches this number of times a day, people are really, really good for a little while, and then of course you don't do it. Nobody does. I wouldn't do it. But actually, if you can integrate stretching into your daily routines, you'll find huge benefit from stretching. So, for example, when you're brushing your teeth in the morning and you're standing at the sink, just take that moment to stretch. Just gently shift your weight from side to side. It's small movements, really, really beneficial. Whilst you're waiting for the kettle to boil, that's another really good one. Or just before you go up the stairs, just take a moment at the bottom of the stairs, have a stretch and carry on. And if you can create these little habits and routines, you'll find you end up stretching a lot more throughout your day, and then you get all the benefit of stretching.
Okay, a question just in from my colleague Elsa. Let me see if I can read this. What is the best treatment for tenosynovitis? I can't even see it. Say it. tenosynovitis. Oh, have we frozen? No, you're there. Yes. So if you, what's the best treatment for that?
Oh, sorry, it froze on me then. Do you mind repeating the question?
This will make everybody laugh because I can't say the word. Let me just say it again. Tenosynovitis? Is that, I'm probably saying it right. Yeah. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
What is the best treatment for that?
think of it as itis. Anything that's itis is inflammation related. So it's just getting on top of inflammation. And in the feet, cold therapy works well. So it's those cold therapies again. If things are really quite acutely swollen, then actually to some extent resting those structures is quite important. They need a little bit of rest to recover. Part of recovery means they will naturally start to feel a little bit stiffer. That's okay. I'm a great one in believing, listen to your body, take your time, don't try and kind of force through things. And also we tend to say, think about what else is going on. So when you get these kind of inflammation of the soft tissues in the feet, sometimes it's because our knees are painful, our hips are painful, and we're perhaps walking slightly differently. And then you get a secondary injury in the foot. So just think about how you're walking. And that's easy to say, hard to do.
Yes.
But try not to walk too awkwardly for too long, because then you will start to trigger these things. And then once they're triggered, they don't necessarily settle quite as quickly if we're still walking difficultly.
Quite a lot of people asking about orthotics and inserts into shoes and etc. And a big piece of work that we did at NRAS some time ago, Elsa led on it. The survey that we did was showed that 63% of people said they used foot orthotics. Would you recommend people get these just over the counter, or should they be custom made for people with RA?
Really good question. Really good question. And actually, there's some really good evidence supporting the use of orthoses. So certainly something that I would encourage everyone to think about. Ideally, and this probably goes back to the issue of access, ideally, I would recommend everybody talks to a podiatrist to get some help with the prescription that's right for you. It's a bit like you can buy glasses over the counter in Sainsbury's, but you can also go and visit, an optometrist. I would recommend seeing a podiatrist. However, we recognise that that's difficult sometimes. If it helps, we tend to think of insoles in two main camps. So there's one group of insoles which are the really soft insoles, and they're designed to be cushioning. So they don't provide any support, but they give cushioning, and especially I think if folks are experiencing flare, those cushioning insoles provide comfort. And they can be really beneficial, and you can buy those over the counter. A material that's particularly useful is something that's called memory pour-on. So if you look for that, that certainly seems to provide people with a lot of comfort. The other...
Ooh, I do apologise for freezing a little bit again. Oh, you're back again.
Insoles are the ones that, and they're designed to have... Oh, there we go.
Yeah, we're I think everybody goes on Thursdays ready for this pub quiz that everybody seems to be doing. So you froze a little bit there. So sorry, just repeat that last little bit again, please.
So just about the rigid insoles. So the firmer insoles are the ones that there's a lot more evidence for. They're designed to help support the structure of the foot, and you can buy them to some degree over the counter, but with those I would probably issue a line of caution, and ideally, like I say, definitely you'd want to seek advice from a podiatrist. If in doubt, it's okay to try. I would probably recommend going for a structured shoe that's got some arch support in it.
Okay, great, thank you. Somebody here is saying their feet often get swollen and cracked, and they use lots of cream, exfoliate, but when their feet swell, the cracks are worse and become open. Could this be psoriatic arthritis, or is it linked with rheumatoid arthritis?
So lots of people actually get dry skin and cracks in the skin without any kind of arthritis. It's incredibly common amongst the general population. Certainly if you've got swelling in your feet, that puts extra pressure on the skin. It has to expand. We know that certain types of psoriatic arthritis where you have skin involvement does then lead to increased difficulties with cracking in the skin. It's hard to say though, and without that kind of very specific one-to-one assessment, whether it's, you know, specifically psoriatic arthritis or not. I would say though it's incredibly common, and actually using emollients as much as possible makes a huge difference.
So just keep up and keep going. And I know, you know, during this crisis, not being able to get out to see, you know, especially those that are shielding, and Elsa, who we all know, did share with me quite a scary story of her husband actually trying to help with a Stanley knife, which is, and you said before we went on air that this isn't uncommon, that people are you know, having to resort to all sorts of foot care that is not really recommended. What would you recommend to people that if they have, you know, hard skin that they have to try and, you know, get rid of?
So absolutely, completely empathise with the difficulty that everyone's experiencing at the moment. I think one of the things that's useful is to note there are two different types of creams that you can get out there. We call them either emollients or keratolytics. So an emollient is a type of moisturiser. So that's something like E45, for example. A keratolytic is a cream that's got urea in it. They come in different strengths. You can buy them over the counter. They're measured in percentage strength. So the strongest you can buy is 25% strength. An example is something like Flexitol, Calmurid, CCS. These are examples of creams with urea in. Supermarkets also do their own brands, which are somewhat cheaper as well. Those creams very specifically target callus or hard skin. So a moisturiser will soften the skin, but not necessarily help to break down that callus. Going for something with the urea in will be much more specific to callus. And that's certainly what we'd be recommending that you use. Use it daily. They work really well on dry skin. So people tend to put moisturisers on when you get out of the shower or the bath, for example. But with these creams, you want to put them on when the feet are at their most dry to get the maximum effect.
Okay, so I think the message there to Elsa's husband is put down the Stanley knife and massage Elsa's feet instead with some nice cream.
And filing, you know, it's difficult, but you know, filing regularly, little and often, and certainly, you know, I think sometimes people find if they find somebody who's willing to pick up a file and help them file their feet, then they want to make the most of that, and so really go for it. But you can leave the feet quite sore. So little and often with the filing, followed up with use of the keratolytic creams, will make a huge difference and will help kind of control the level of callus build-up.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, and some very clear direction there. Somebody's saying here, since lockdown, I have severe calf pain in both legs due to, you know, they're used to going to hydrotherapy for their Achilles tendonitis. What can I do to help calves if they rest? And of course, everybody's stuck indoors, so we are all resting, probably more than we should do. If I rest, the Achilles tighten. So again, any tips on that?
So this is we've got a survey running at the moment, and this is something that we're seeing a lot, that folks are finding that they're really having to adjust their physical activity levels, and it's significant, the impact. With the calves in particular, it's a very big muscle, and so stretching is, again, it's one of the most important things. The key here is little and often, so as regularly as you can throughout the day, stretching the calf muscle. Again, directly to the NRAS website to look at the videos on there to see how to do all the different stretches, and you'll find there are a number of different ways of doing the stretching. Find the one that works for you, that you can easily build into your daily activity, then you'll get the benefit of the stretching. The important thing is, if you're feeling well otherwise and your joints are good, keep active. Don't let it be the reason to become inactive.
Yes.
The benefits of activity are absolutely fabulous. So keep active, add in stretching.
Question just in, any advice for plantar fasciitis, please?
Yeah.
They're really sending these tongue twisters to me this evening.
They've got it in for you, Claire.
I have.
So yeah, plantar fasciitis. So this is also, we call it plantar heel pain. So plantar is the underside of the foot, and it's pain right in that heel. With plantar fasciitis, the plantar fascia is this structure, and we think of it like a thick elastic band that attaches from the heel underneath the toes, or just before the toes in the front part of the foot. And it can get quite tight, and when it gets tight, it pulls on that calcaneus, that heel bone, and that can be really painful. In the first instance, if it's inflamed, if it's a new thing, all of that stuff that we talked about before, the cold therapy, the cold pan rolling, that makes a huge difference. And then you're going to hate me. The biggest difference is stretching. So good footwear, a good pair of trainers makes a big difference. With plantar fasciitis, folks tell me, do you know what, but it feels like my foot is swollen, and it's lovely to just go barefoot on the cold floor. And I completely get that. Okay for a little bit, not okay all day, every day, because the foot being unsupported means that that fascial band has to tighten up and work extra hard, and it's likely to keep being damaged, and then you pull it and irritate it, it heals up a little bit, you pull it again, and you can get into this vicious cycle. One of the hallmarks of plantar fasciitis is pain and stiffness on weight bearing in the morning, so that as soon as you get out of bed and put your foot to the floor, it's really stiff. The biggest thing you can do to help, take your time in the morning, do those stretches before you get up and get going. It helps that structure to just loosen off into the day. If you're too quick, the structure's tight, you jump out of bed and you pull it, and it's damaged. So all of the rest of the day, you're fighting, trying to recover from that initial damage in the morning. Stretching.
Yes. And of course, now that everybody's at home, probably when we're, wearing slippers around the house a little bit more often, and probably not because you think, well, I'm not going out, so I'm not putting my trainers on or my more supportive shoes. So perhaps, that's another thing to be concerned with. I realise that, we do these half-hour sessions, and there's always so much more we could do, but there's a few that have really come in that I really want to try and highlight, because these people seem to be struggling. I have changes in my joints, collapsed arches, and a torn PTT. I've been in an air boot since January, now starting to go out without the air boot, but their feet are really, really painful, and the help in big capital letters. Anything there that we can say?
You need to see a podiatrist. I would say that's an instance where it's really hard to cope and manage on your own. So go back to your GP and get specific help and guidance. PTT is a particular tendon that comes down around the inside of the ankle and underneath the foot, and that helps to lift the foot. So every time you're walking, it's one of those things that's very important in lifting the foot and helping you to take a step. What the boot will have been doing is giving you some support. Take your time transitioning out of the boot. So don't go from wearing it all of the time to going out for a walk on uneven terrain without it. It's about gradual reduction. So, pace yourself. Go without the boot for half an hour at the most, just at home in a familiar surrounding where you're not doing too much. Build it up really, really gradually. And if you're not in the boot, really important to go into something like a trainer or a supportive shoe. Don't go from the boot to barefoot.
Yeah, or flip-flops or sandals or whatever.
Yeah,
not that today would be the day for that. It's been quite chilly and nasty. Again, brilliant questions. Thank you everybody for submitting them. I really want to highlight the study that you're doing at the moment. We have got it up on the website. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're hoping that will do, and what's the aim of that research?
Yeah, fantastic. So we've got a survey that's live at the moment. So please, everybody click the link. It's for everybody with any kind of foot pain or complaint, old or new. What we really want to understand are what are the problems that people are experiencing at the moment. What do you need? And therefore, how can we make sure we broadcast those needs really clearly and loudly through the research? That's really important in helping us understand how we reshape the services in the future, but also coming back online. As we know through COVID, everything's very much limited, but we need to make sure that we're attending to those rehabilitation needs that everyone is experiencing. So as much feedback as possible really helps us understand how we shape the service and make recommendation about what is needed and put in place for people.
And I know everybody out there, we've been throwing lots and lots of surveys at you, but it is this sort of data that is going to really give us a way forward and a way out of this. And just on that, we know that lots of people are having virtual consultations with their rheumatologist or virtual consultations with their specialist nurses. Are podiatry offering that as well? Are you doing that sort of virtual?
Again, there's regional variation, but our podiatry service is not closed. We've never closed. And that's the case for a number of other rheumatology podiatry services that I know up and down the UK. So the podiatry services that do exist are there. Some of our face-to-face contact is limited, but it's still there. We're offering home visits for people. Some people are able to come into clinics, and there are...
Oh, we're freezing a little bit again. I'm sure she'll come back any moment now. Don't you just love technology?
Our telephone services for it's a...
You froze again a little bit, but don't worry, I think we've got it. I think there'll be lots of people rushing down to Southampton now, and you'll be inundated with people.
I think, and again, it's a plug for the survey, but the survey genuinely, we need to know about what's good and working and what's needed, because that's the evidence that we can then put forward. And so far on the survey, what we're seeing is not everybody necessarily wants to go and see an NHS podiatrist. People want to just get advice and support, or just know what's going on, one-off contact. So that's really useful, that we can help shape that.
Yeah, exactly. And now with the use of technology, you can actually look at somebody's feet, even though with their phones or iPads or whatever. So there's lots of it'll be a new way forward. It'll be a new normal. Anyway, again, thank you so much to everybody for your brilliant questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get to yours. I just want to wrap up with, we have got lots of other surveys going on as well as yours, Lindsay. We've got the Foot Health one, and we just mentioned. King's College London are doing a survey on the quality of life and the impact of COVID on that. Please do have a look. University of Huddersfield are looking at the impact of shielding. So if you've been shielding or are currently shielding, they want to hear from you. Again, all these links are on the coronavirus research on our NRAS website. University of Birmingham looking at well-being during COVID. just on Monday there'll be a new survey going up. We're working with a pharmaceutical company looking at RA services, so that will be live very soon, as will another one from King's College London. So please do check back on our website and under the research section on Monday. Lots of new things coming up there. We have an event that would have been face-to-face. We had a lovely patient event all planned for down in Brighton in Sussex on the 24th of June, but we're now going online. We're calling it the Zoom Room, or the Room Zoom. So it's room for you if you're interested and would like to attend. While it will be talking about local services, anybody can come in and join on that. So you do need to register. So go to nras.org.uk, room for you. Next week, I'm having a Thursday evening off because I've done quite a lot of these and everybody's fed up listening to me, I'm sure. So my colleague Nadine is going to be talking to Dr Lizzie McPhee. And you will remember Lizzie did some of our earlier ones, so she's giving us a bit more of an update on the BSR guidelines around COVID. And finally, the 3rd of July, I will be hosting, which is a Friday, 3rd of July, I will be hosting yet another online NRAS quiz. So if you're interested in that, again, all the details are on the website. Thank you again so much. And somebody did comment how much they appreciate someone like yourself, having worked probably very busy all day in clinic, taking time out when you're all sort of swamped with this pandemic and working in very strange and weird times, to take your time to spend with us at NRAS and to share your expertise. It really is truly appreciated. And I know we're not clapping anymore for NHS workers, but you know, in our hearts we're all saying thank you so much to you and your colleagues for all you're doing for so many people out there. I really appreciate it, Lindsay, and I hope we'll have you back again. Maybe to share with us the results of your survey would be really interesting. So like to have you again, and thank you again, and good night everybody, and thank you for joining. And please do let us know if there's a topic that you'd like us to cover on one of these Facebook Lives, and we'll be continuing doing them as long as you need us. Good night, and thanks again.